This is the second part of AmaHlubi nation. We will talk about Langalibalele I. Among Mthimkulu's sons, we have Dlomo II, the heir, Langalibalele or Mtetwa, Duba, Magadla, Ludidi, Luzipho, and Mhlambiso. Mahwanqa was reluctant to hand over power to Dlomo. As a result, Dlomo sought advice from his counterpart, the Amazulu King Dingane, a practice that was common even before his time. It is also documented that even King Sobuza I of the amaSwati tried to intervene in this matter. Upon Dlomo's return, his regiment killed Mahwanqa, and then Dlomo went and advised Dingane. Unfortunately, little did King Dlomo know that Dingane had other intentions, which was to weaken the AmaHlubi by destroying the AmaHlubi leadership. As a result, it was on this visit that King Dlomo and his guards were put to death on Dingane's instruction. It is from this occasion that the Hlubi-Zulu relations began to sour. Clearly, the two had very different ideas about the future state of political affairs. Zulu wanted to consolidate power and had little tolerance of independent nations on its borders. On the other hand, the AmaHlubi were bent on regrouping and reasserting their independence from any political power. Clearly, at this time, the balance of power had tilted towards the Zulu monarchy. Dlomo's death opened the way for his younger brother, Mtetwa, Langalibalele I, to claim the throne as king of AmaHlubi. However, this would not happen without Mini, Mahwanqa's son, attempting to claim the throne for himself. Again, it was Dingane who sent his army to assist Langalibalele defeat Mini. After that, Dingane tries to kill Langalibalele on his visit, but Langalibalele survives another attempt by Dingane to destroy the AmaHlubi leadership. Some historians suggest that Dingane, who was in the process of consolidating his power in main Zululand, was not comfortable with the resurrection of the Hlubi ruling house. He saw this as a threat to his rule near his borders and was keen to neutralize nearby nations that showed any inclination towards autonomous rule. Having to rebuild the nation after the Mfecane Wars was a major challenge for Langalibalele. It was the events that led to Natal becoming a British territory in 1843 that sparked a new chapter in AmaHlubi history. AmaHlubi land, especially Umzinyathi district, which had always been the royal home of the AmaHlubi royal house, was cut through by the northern border of this new British colony. This incident technically divided the AmaHlubi who had returned to their home, such that some were now living in the colony while others lived in Zululand. As a result, the AmaHlubi ruling house found itself within the borders of Zululand. Wright and Manson made the following observation. From the perspective of the Zulu royal house, Langalibalele was beginning to emerge as a figure whose power in the Upper Mzinyathi, Upper Pongolo borderlands rivaled that of the king himself. This was a development that Mpande, who had succeeded Dingane, would not tolerate for long. This is when he started raiding Langalibalele's people, an act that was an implicit recognition of Langalibalele's independence, for if he was fully incorporated into the Zulu kingdom, other institutionalized means would have been used to extract wealth. Another point to make regarding Langalibalele's independence from the Zulu monarchy relates to his arrival in Natal. There was a law, practice, or principle which stated that petrol which came with people who were deemed to have fled the Zulu kingdom would be returned to the king of the Zulus, as they were deemed to be his property. This was, however, not the case with Langalibalele, a recognition that he had ruled autonomously of the Zulu king. AmaHlubi had now reoccupied their homeland and should now be free from the rule of any authority. Here they were free from disturbances from the Zulu, but they had to contend with the British authority, which wanted to subject all traditional leaders to its rule and deemed them and their nations to be subject of the Queen of England. AmaHlubi in Natal grew not only in numbers but also in prosperity. Langalibalele's position of influence in African societies inside and outside the Natal colony was further enhanced by his reputation as a rainmaker. It is reported that kings and chiefs throughout Southern Africa had consulted him, including King Moshosho and King Mpande. He is reported to have developed strong ties with King Moshosho, King Mtetwa, and King Sobuza of the amaSwati, a clear recognition of his status as king once a powerful AmaHlubi nation. The British in Natal were certainly getting uneasy about Langalibalele's growing independence, his defiance of the colonial authority, and his influence among other nations in Southern Africa. This is what led to the infamous battle in 1873 and his subsequent arrest for treason and imprisonment on Robben Island in 1874. There were unfounded fears that Langalibalele's general defiance, his independence, and possession of firearms were a security threat to the colony's white community. Rumor was that Langalibalele was collecting guns for purpose of planning a rebellion. Given his influence and prominence, it was a threat the British were not to take lightly. As soon as he knew the colonial government was going to arrest him and attack his nation, he planned his escape with some of his troops. The colonial administration considered this treason. Langalibalele was exiled to Cape Town until 1887, when he was allowed to return to Natal and resettled in the Swartkop area under some form of house arrest. He never regained his power as leader of the Hlubi. He died in 1889 and was buried on the foothills of the Drakensberg mountain. Despite the outcry, there was no restitution for the Hlubi.